Okay, Mitch, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really pumped that you're here. I hear this is your first ever kind of podcast style or kind of interview style format. So we'll take it easy today. It'll be pretty low key and chill. So, Mitch, I think I know a decent amount about your background and I think the problem that you're solving. But why don't you give the audience an overview of what Galaxy is, meaning the product that you're building, and then also the problem that you're solving for Galaxy?
Totally. First off, thanks for having me, Dave. Super excited to be here. So yeah, my name is Mitch Bregman. I'm the founder of Galaxy. Galaxy is aiming to build a data platform in a box. Effectively, building a data platform is very, very hard. You procure a lot of different tools to build a data platform. Think about the sources, the warehouses, the analytics that must happen on those warehouses, the ingestion layer, the transformation layer. And our view is that this fragmentation in the data space is actually largely a scam. And you have a lot of niche players who are building these various different sort of niche products in these different spaces to kind of create this engine, which is a data platform that effectively does something pretty simple. It's just ask a question and get an answer, right? At the end of the day, business folks need to get answers to questions to make decisions, especially correct decisions. And right now, the cycle to get an answer to a question is very, very vicious. They go to an analytics engineer, or an analytics engineer goes to a data engineer goes to a software engineer. We want to create our goal is to create a single pane of glass where every single person on your team that needs data or needs to interact with data is able to do it in a very streamlined, flexible, and easy way to get the answers that they're looking for, to build the apps on top of the data that they have and create workflows that are reproducible, observable, and allow them to create efficiencies in their day-to-day work.
So, I mean, what you just described is like the dream for kind of every CEO, CFO, procurement director. And I'm curious because I think this has been tried before, which you and I have kind of discussed in different informed factors. But like, what's special about now that you could do something like this, where what you're describing is like a full visibility, not just into the business, but also the business logic and context aware. So, like, one, I would love to know kind of what allowed you to do that today. And then number two, it also sounds like I'd imagine it's pretty intense to kind of go to market for this product, meaning like it takes a lot of time to onboard a customer, who's the buyer. So maybe like separate those two questions out. Like why now? Like what allowed for the business to build this? And then how do you think about selling this type of product and onboarding a customer?
Yeah. So for the why now, that has created leverage like unlike ever before, right? And we have like these systems or this additional brain that allows you to do a lot of things very, very fast, right? Historically, teams have been built around building the entire data platform. You have tons of people working on this thing. There's a lot of really, really rich open source tooling that exists today that allows you to stitch together a data platform and effectively package it up in a nice way, right? So open source tooling has come along a very long way. AI is massive, massive, massive leverage. So anecdotally, when Leon and I were at Flock Safety, we built this entire data platform from the ground up, right? The amount of data volume that Flock Safety was dealing with was tremendous. Multimodal data, how do you actually search on top of that data? How do you visualize that data? How do you provide real-time analytics? And for us to procure 6, 7, 8, 12 tools to actually stitch together this data platform became extremely, extremely expensive. And actually most tools couldn't support the amount of volume that we were dealing with.
It's just on average, like if you were to average like 12-point solutions for this, what does that cost an enterprise?
It depends on volume typically, but in the millions of dollars, anywhere from one to let's say $10 million. It really depends on the size of the business. Data warehouses are very, very expensive. Ingestion is very, very expensive. The amount of compute you need to run workflows and orchestration and transportation transformations is extremely, extremely expensive. And so what we did at Flock Safety was fraction of the cost of stitching together all these different tools. A, we cared about cost, and B, we needed to have a much more observable system because we were dealing with very, very sensitive data. And so when we were at Flock Safety, we built this data platform, right? We built all the ingestion from scratch. We built the transformation layer. We built real-time analytics. And we used some existing tooling, right? For example, like we're not going to build any database, right? So we use Postgres and we use ClickHouse. But for ingestion, we did use open source tooling. For transformations, we did use open source tooling. For orchestration, we used open source tooling. And what that resulted in was a much, much better system that we really understood and lived and breathed every single day. Now, most companies don't have that luxury. They don't have the resources or the people to really build this type of thing. So they end up going and outsourcing this work offshore or to some contractor, and they end up with I'm sorry, but a half-assed system, and they end up with a system that they don't really have observability into, understand how it's built. If that contractor goes away, what do they do, right? And they go to these people and they try to get an analysis and analytics from them, and it's like a 5 day, it's like a vicious cycle. It's always been a vicious cycle, and this whole self-serve thing and self-serve presented in a very clean way has just not been solved. And we're effectively solving that. Now, the second question was, so that was for the why now, right? The
Yeah,
second
just
question
selling.
was
How do
our
you
go
like?
to
How do you
market.
how do you yeah? How do you sell this product? Because what you're describing again, like it's the dream. I think every business owner wants this, but also to kind of get that level of data, I imagine it takes some time to kind of ingest it and manage it. But so curious how you sell this product.
So we're taking a very contrarian approach in how these tools typically exist and sell and breathe, right? Like our product is actually very PLG, right? So effectively, you're
And
able to,
PLG stands for product led growth.
yes, product led growth. So effectively, anyone who's a data practitioner, think your software engineer, your data engineer, your data analyst, they can go in and download Galaxy as a desktop app. We're moving to cloud, but it's a desktop app effectively that allows them to connect to their proprietary data systems. So you go in, you connect to a database. The minute you sign up to Galaxy, we start building context around what your business is and who you are, right? So we understand what industry you're in, what vertical you serve, who you sell to, sort of what companies are adjacent to you. And once you connect your proprietary data system,
Mhm.
we sort of build this, it's called a semantic layer, that creates it's a relationship between what we understand your business does and the data that represents sort of your business, right, in these proprietary data systems. And so what we've done is we automatically create this like layer. Now our go to market is actually quite simple, right? Like people can just log in, right? We start doing things and they connect their proprietary data systems. We start doing things. And our vision is like this onboarding must be frictionless as possible. Typically, when you buy a BI tool or you buy an ingestion tool or one of these tools, like it is a whole procurement process, right? You have to get into a contractual agreement. It's like, tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And we actually wanted to make it as flexible as possible so that we can be with you and support you from the ground up. As for pricing, to be honest, to be determined. We currently are a freemium model. Our goal today, at the moment, we are, a new startup. Our goal today is really to understand how to work with very, very different data systems and give ourselves enough of a sort of a sample size or sample set of things that we can build on top of and understand and learn from. Over time, we have been actually talking to a few customers around using our API, so our semantic service, a semantic layer as a service, but that is sort of to be determined on pricing. ACVs in this space are typically very, very large, and we can imagine we can get to contract sizes
Do you have
pretty large.
customers when you sell Mitch this product, like, and you talk to an engineer that's like a product led kind of growth motion, and you talk to the engineer, like, has the engineer ever come out and said, like, there's so much friction today for me to kind of wrap these 12-point solutions that I'm just like pulling my hair out until I found a galaxy out there?
So are you asking if like there are people out there have said that to us?
Yeah, yeah. Just like if there's been so much friction of them kind of assessing the 12 different point solutions and spending, $1 to $10 million in terms of building this to be like, I just found you, like, it's so much more, it's so frictionless in terms of using your offering than, wrangling together these 12-point solutions.
So the way we present ourselves today is really just like we're a query client, right? Like we allow you to connect to your data system and just start interacting with your databases with AI or without AI, right? So we're serving a non-technical and technical user alike. When we get on the phone with like more large scale customers or customers who are interested in like having much more control over their data platform, that is exactly the sentiment they express. They're like, oh, I have to stitch like these different tools together and make all this thing happen. And I feel like I'm like lost, right? I don't really know how to do it. And then they end up getting so lost that they contract the work out, right?
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
and so our goal at Galaxy is to present this technical thing that seems very complex in the most clean and intuitive way possible,
Which I
such
think is
that
probably very hard to do. To create that level of simplicity is extremely difficult to do in the craft.
it is extremely difficult to do. We think of things as building blocks, and once you kind of grasp your head around like that, every single thing is like a building block to a much larger system. It becomes easier. Our agent also will help guide you through doing these things. So if you go into our platform and ask our agent, "Hey, how do I query this, or how do I build this workflow, or how do I visualize this?" Our agent will actually do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Your job is actually to confirm or deny if we have done a good job or not, and then extend it however you deem fit. So leveraging AI makes it easier and less complex for people to build these things. But then on top of that, our goal is to make it so that it's very observable for you. So you can see every single thing that our system is taking, every action that our system is taking on your behalf. So you can say something like someone created a source, or someone created this document, or someone created this workflow, edited this workflow, so on and so forth. All of that information also continuously goes back to our model, right? And our model can continuously work and improve and get better for your specific use case. And that's really the goal.
How do you, at this early of a company, how do you build trust kind of with an enterprise for something that is so sensitive, which is their data?
Course. So that's been actually a challenge, certainly. So let me break this up into like sort of like a couple of buckets. So the first bucket is you have your ICs. ICs typically who are like engineer focused or like work with data have credentials to their data systems. And they're for the most part able to download, different tools. Let's say they're maybe SOC 2 compliant or whatever it is like, and connect to those data sources from those tools and start interacting with those data sources. So from that perspective, quite frictionless. Then you think about like the mid-market growth kind of company. Those companies are not as sensitive as much about their data, right? They're like companies like in e-commerce for gravel, or like a logistics SaaS company in like Nebraska or something. They don't care as much about the sensitivity of their data as like a company that's doing public safety would. On the enterprise side, we're currently actually working to uh, make our system what's called a hybrid deployment, which effectively means we're able to deploy our service on your infrastructure. And so you completely have your infrastructure maintained in your cloud, completely cut off from the rest of the world. We just help maintain the infrastructure for you and make sure that it's working for you and push updates when necessary. So we're actually in the process of building that out in support for enterprise features, enterprise companies in the future. That's our initial thinking and sort of what's been expressed to us that would make sense, but we are not there just yet. For the lower stage sort of growth mid-market companies and sort of ICs at these companies, we're able to serve them in a meaningful way today. And that's a good enough sample size for us to build on top of for
Yeah.
now.
So what's the current kind of customer persona or industries that you're serving right now?
So we're quite horizontal. Like anyone who has a database or anyone who has proprietary data systems, we're able to serve. Who we're serving best and who is most interested in us building out their data platform for them are sort of like your mid-market. I call them not super sexy, but I think they're the sexiest companies in the world, SaaS
Hmm.
businesses that are just like producing revenue. They're stable. Think like a company that organizes like car pickups from dealerships to drop them off
Yeah.
to your home, or like a company that sells gravel to corporate masons or something like that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Those types of companies are dealing with a ton of different data. They're dealing with Google Analytics data. They're dealing with
Yeah. Yeah.
search data, their own internal data, and we're able to serve them and build this like effectively data platform for them very, very simplistically. And they have the building blocks to extend it in whichever way that they want. And they get very, very excited about the potential of this. Of course, we have a lot more to build, but those are sort of the areas where we're actually winning really well.
If if AI didn't exist from a few years ago, kind of at the application layer, what is the current customer using? Is it basically the cobbled together of these various 12-point solutions and hiring a lot of OpEx to manage it?
Exactly. So anecdotally at like one of my previous employers, Flock Safety, I don't know how much I can disclose, but there's a lot of people working on this data platform and continuously extending it. And most of the people who are working on it were effectively serving the needs of business users, right? And so yeah, you have a ton of different people, you have a ton of different systems, and you have a lot of these kind of silos in between all of this to make sort of things work end to end. And so before this AI thing, before having maybe the idea of a platform in a box, yeah, you'd have like these cobbled together systems, these super fragmented systems that you have to actually go out and procure every single one of them and then figure out how to connect them so that this engine works in a very, very clean way. That was on you to do as your company to do, and the resources that you guys have, your engineers, to make sure that this thing works. And that thing breaks every day, right? So picking up the pieces of the puzzle always is a rough spot.
Isn't there just a world here, Mitch, where you know, prior to AI the last few years, right? We had kind of a lot of data that was an output of code generation, structured data from transactions, vendor data, et cetera. But that was mainly managed through a pretty basic database, maybe even Excel as kind of the most powerful tool out there, right, for the common business user. But isn't there a world now where if you're in one of these businesses, let's say kind of these unsexy, software companies, or even at an enterprise level, you actually have agents going out, executing the work and doing the task. There's so much kind of non-human data, or there will be so much non-human data that's getting generated by the agent side that the context of what's going on inside the enterprise is permutations beyond anyone's imagination. So I imagine where you're sitting and the tailwind that you're investing behind is actually quite powerful because now the data set is just far more kind of enriched, but it's also somewhat unstructured that you're going to help clean up through the Galaxy interface. As I think about what you're building.
That's pretty accurate. Yes. We're not full believers in and maybe my mind might change around this, but and something I constantly think about, but the idea of just agents swarming and doing things for you feels like as a society, we're not ready for that just yet. I do think that there exists places where agents can serve at very pointed solutions, but to have agents roaming free and doing a bunch of these different things to me feels uh, a little premature today, and humans really still need to be in the loop largely, right? And so yes, we actually offer agents. We offer an AI service that goes out and does things, but they're very, very pointed things that it's capable of doing, and we provide the observability on top of that. And effectively, we actually really only index the things that the human really cares about, right? And that's sort of gives us the ability to make sure that we're not getting muddied with all the things that an LLM or the AI slop potentially is doing.
Mhm.
So when someone human, we don't execute queries, our agent doesn't execute queries. For example, a human does. When a human does that and a human adds a description, or even if they generate it with a description with AI, but click save, then we will go out and index it because they've approved it in our mind, right? Rather
Mhm.
than allowing an agent to roam free and kind of go do anything that it needs to do. No one really actually knows what's going on, right? You just have this machine that's just
Yeah.
kind of doing stuff.
Yes.
And that's not a future I necessarily believe in. I think human creativity and ingenuity and sort of creativity is very, very, very important, and
Yeah.
that can't go away.
And there's certainly a tension, right, inside the enterprise between this concept of an agent going out doing a full end-to-end work stream versus what the human is doing traditionally. And the tension is somewhat, is my job at risk, right? If I'm working inside of a big company and they just, doing this task. I agree with you. We're actually not there yet. There's some tasks I think that agents are quite good at. One of those software engineering, because the code is actually fairly structured. I'd also think kind of data engineering and actually data manipulation, which used to be built around kind of studying R and statistics is probably quite good on the agent side. But I think that is one of those things where at the business level, being able to have a service like yours where it's not just, and sure, single player mode for an engineer is valuable, but there's a world where the CEO, CFO, FP&A, all these other folks literally have logins to Galaxy and they're seeing real time reporting pushed dynamically to them minutes, hours, daily, weekly as to what's happening in different departments, revenue and cost functions of the business, which required a lot of coordination prior to AI. Prior to do it.
Absolutely. Our goal is to empower everyone on the business and on the engineering side, technical and non-technical folk alike, to sit on the same pane of glass effectively. Our view is largely that the lines between technical folks and non-technical folks are blurring at the fastest rate we've ever seen in our lives. Non-technical folks can be dangerous and technical folks can do non-technical things faster. And how do we create a single place where they can all live and breathe together synergistically?
Yeah.
And so if we can empower, if we actually, I'll even go as far as to say is I think we're at a point in society where we're due for a title change. You've noticed in growth and marketing growth, that you've seen this emergence of the growth engineer through companies like Clay and Unify, right? And so people are sort of engineering growth. They're thinking about systems of action that allow them to do growth. My view is that the world is going to shift to a business engineer. I view that business is becoming an engineering game and engineering is becoming a business game. And that's all
Hmm.
converging at a rapid, rapid, rapid rate. How do we create platforms around that make it super, super simple for both parties to do the same thing and bridge their mental maps and brains into a single kind of place? And that's really our goal. I want to power that as largely as possibly I can, because I think that's a really exciting future that we can all be looking forward to and excited about.
Yeah. I'm smiling, I'm nodding because I don't want to date myself, but I had a role like that inside of a public company, bridging the business and the engineering side. And there's a lot of documents and, process docs that were built that were not necessarily that efficient. So Mitch, kind of slightly different topic. So I think you probably have a pretty good front row view on like your customers' willingness to experiment, especially because the product is, PLG motion. What have you seen on the customers that you have today and the customers or prospective customers that you're talking to for their willingness to kind of try Galaxy and their willingness to try new workflow tools, versus the probably traditional way that maybe big companies would buy software, which is it needs to get approved, it needs to get, verified, it has to go through compliance. I'm just curious what your experience has been, when you work with some of these larger businesses and their engineers are just finding you organically and just downloading you and then trying. And
Yeah, it's
more so,
interesting.
I'm also curious, like, what does that say about the business, the company that the engineer is working at? Like, are they more
Well,
forward looking that they're actually willing to experiment and try Galaxy? Or is that just the norm of where we're moving to of buying software?
I think a lot of it's the norm of where we're moving to with buying software. I think it's less about sort of the innovation appetite of a business. I think it's really more of like the culture has shifted with people who like people want to do more things because they can do more things, right? And we're providing them a platform where they can do more things faster and more accurately, right? And for example, anecdotally, like I had a pretty high profile CTO like come inbound to us and basically said something like, I don't want to sit there for 45 minutes or an hour, like debugging a query or rewriting a query or something like that. Like, can you just get me 90% of the way there and I'll tweak the enums if I need to or something like that, or add the business logic that I need to. Right. And so the culture has shifted that like A, attention is shorter. B is like people want that like instant gratification, that like dopamine inducing experience. And we're providing both of those things for your work, right? And so people are really excited about moving faster. Um, and if we can, that's really what's largely attracting the people who are like coming inbound to us or finding our platform and trying to use it. I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but it's less
Yeah,
of like it's less of like a company has this appetite. It's more of like the IC at your company is really excited about doing something fast and efficiently to impress whoever, to do whatever, but
yeah,
we're providing them a place where they can do that really, really rapidly.
yeah. I think it does answer the question. It's more of just like, I think the broader trend we're noticing with all the founders that we're interviewing is that for the products that they're building and who they're selling to, there is an appetite, whether you are a senior business leader to an independent contributor, willing to try net new products that I have yet to see historically in the traditional point software solution world that require like a demo and a trial and then an onboarding. And like one entrepreneur, one CEO said, like vibe coding has now become the best internal tool that an enterprise could ever have before because the business minded operator is now is very engineering dangerous. And the engineering, operator is now very business dangerous in terms of what's there.
Yeah, I mean, it's I would say like the culture has shifted, like chat gpt and the open ais of the world and cursors of the world and those types of like companies have really made it so easily available for people to build things super super fast, and they've changed the way people think about building things, that they've created this new avenue for all these different like they actually paved the road for everyone else to really be experimental and a allow someone like me to build like a product of my dreams, right? And then B allow people who would want to use my product be much more experimental. Like the culture has become much more experimental and willingness to try, because if it has efficiency gains, they're going to use it.
Yeah. Mitch, one of the other things, kind of two final questions and I'll wrap up. Like one of the other things that I just found interesting about what you're building today versus I think software in my career in the last 15 20 years is it has like you're very opinionated as to kind of what the data output is, but you're very flexible as to what the pane of glass looks like because it's like conversational, but it's also structured in terms of what the query system looks like. And I'm just curious, like from your experience working at pretty large kind of like early employees and then becoming kind of multi-billion dollar companies, like does point software and like point solutions, do they exist, right, in the next, 10 years? Or are enterprises going to be buying something like what you're doing, which could be a wrapped workflow and an output of what's there? Which probably also ties to like how you think about pricing ultimately and like the outcome of what you're optimizing for. I know that's somewhat of a loaded question, but it's almost been this recurring theme of all the interviews and discussions we've been having so far with these founders. I think now we're living in a world where like AI is going to deliver an output for you or a specific opinionated workflow. Like, I'm curious for you how you've kind of internalized that from all of your experience working at companies where there has been either a seat based model or a usage based model or an output based model to like how that applies to Galaxy, right? Like, as you think about your pricing, because you're clearly ingesting a lot of data, you're clearly delivering a lot of value. I don't know if charging per seat is the best kind of model for this business, which is the legacy way of pricing software on a seat based model.
Yeah. We have a lot of work to do on the pricing for sure. I think a lot of where our mental map is now is like sort of usage-based pricing. There are a couple of things like I think about, right? Like a company that doesn't have super crazy volume of data, like they don't need to spend as much money as like the bigger player, right? If a company doesn't have as many people leveraging AI, like we shouldn't be charging them for not using their AI, right? Like, so a lot of our thinking is around like usage based. Outcomes based is a little bit more difficult in our space, but you do see a lot of industries that I'm like closely tracking to be very, very much so outcomes based today. And I think
Mhm.
that's like a fascinating like paradigm shift in the world. But yeah, we think about this as sort of like usage based for the most part. As for pointed solutions, did you kind of want my take on pointed solutions in general?
Yes.
I have a spicy take for you. I don't believe the future will have pointed solutions. I believe that actually software will build itself for you as you need it. And so like there will be some Goliath Corp one day, maybe it'll be Galaxy, that effectively will build software tailored to your use case in real time automatically and create the experience for you as you need it immediately in real time. And so at some point we'll have such deep level of flexibility and like the ability and so much context that's been gathered, and obviously context windows get huge, and maybe we get into quantum computing, who knows, right? Like there will be a world where like software will be designed immediately tailored exactly for your use case, the exact way you need it, with the backend systems in place for you on the fly effectively, and everyone will have a custom solution for their particular use case. How that plays out, I don't know, but that is my
I mean,
juicy, let's say,
this is gonna
20
be
year
it is
take.
honestly gonna be so exciting. I mean, it doesn't even feel like 20 years out. It feels like it could be like, 5 to 7 years out for certain industries.
It's interesting. We talk about this a lot internally. We do all sort of share this common vision because like it's sort of like an interesting North Star for us. Like, how do we make a system so flexible that it works for anyone, right? Like, if we can figure that out, I mean, that's like a monster problem to solve. But if we can do something there or set the stage for something down the line, like that would be a very, very exciting
Yeah.
thing. And then B, like internally, like we have an engineer, his name is Young, who is effectively like, of course, he rips an insane amount of product, but a lot of his time he thinks about, how do I become 5 engineers at once, right? How do I build an insane amount of product at crazy velocity effectively, and like it's auditable, we can review it well, it feels like a
Yeah.
human wrote it, right?
Yeah.
Mm. And so the world is definitely converging towards this sort of future. It's just a matter of like, how do you deliver an experience, and how do you not be too premature about it? Because I'm not sure if the society is like fully ready for that
Yes.
future.
That's a very good
So
point.
we want to be pretty incremental about how we do it and present it in a way that feels comfortable, but slowly we evolve as sort of society evolves into this future.
Yeah. Yeah. Mitch, this has been awesome. Thank you for spending the time this afternoon. Final question for you is for folks who want to learn more about Galaxy and know more about you or your background, what's the best contact details to get in touch?
Yes, you can find us on getgalaxy.io. My name is Mitch Bregman. You can look me up on LinkedIn. My handle on all social medias is Mitch Bregs, MITCHBREGS, and my email is mitch@getgalaxy.io. Thanks so
Awesome.
much, Dave.
Thanks, Mitch. This has been great.
This has been awesome, man.